58-year-old Nicky Sutton of Morristown is just 26 hours from dying in the electric chair. Governor Bill Lee announced today he won't step in to stop the execution set for Thursday in Nashville.
Sutton murdered 4 people on his way to death row, but it happened so long ago, the public's memory of his crimes and his victims have faded.
WBIR 10 News reporter Jim Matheny takes us through the history of this case, and a warning tonight, this report includes violent details.
These are just all broken pieces of pottery.
Shattered shards of prehistoric pottery are actually memories for Reverend Charles Maynard. Fragments he collected with a dear uncle who shared the same name and passions.
Uncle Charlie, he just loved the history, the beauty. He just loved this area.
That love with his Uncle Charlie led Maynard to become the first president of the nonprofit Friends of the Smokies.
My love of the outdoors partially comes from him. Even as a kid, I knew that he was really cool. Just his pose is so cool.
In the late 1970s, Charlie Almond was an engineer with his own up-and-down business that restored old strip mines to make the land usable again.
You need people who will go in and plant, 1,000 pine trees. And so he had hired Nick for those kind of jobs.
Nick is Nicky Sutton, a teenager from Morristown whose father committed suicide. Nicky lived here with his grandmother, Dorothy Sutton, a respected, retired elementary school teacher.
They all loved Miss Sutton, a very giving and loving person.
Today, Amy Cook teaches elementary school. Not only knows the respect for Miss Sutton, she also knew her grandson.
Nicky, he was over at our house a lot when my brother and he were in high school. John Large was just a special guy. He had a big heart. This was probably his senior year in high school. This is how I'll always remember him.
Amy was starting 6th grade in 1979 when suddenly nobody could find her brother.
My brother was 19, had just been married. Nick evidently came by his apartment and got John, and there was a drug deal going down. Nick was on a $100 a day cocaine habit.
Weeks went by with no sign of Large, and around the same time, Charlie Almond's Sunday phone calls to his family stopped.
We're really worried. We haven't heard from Uncle Charlie in a few weeks. That was a long time.
A few months later, just before Christmas, 1979, Dorothy Sutton was also missing. Her own grandson, Nicky Sutton, bashed her in the back of the head, dumped her body in the Nolichucky River, wrapped in blankets chained to a concrete block. At Sutton's murder trial, he shocked the jury by admitting he did kill someone, Charles Almond, and cooked up a crazy story that Almond killed his grandmother before Nicky killed Almond in self-defense. Then he dumped both of their bodies in the river. Investigators and the jury did not buy it and sentenced Sutton to life at Brushy Mountain Prison. Behind bars, Sutton confessed to another murder, John Large, and led investigators to a shallow grave on some family property in Mount Sterling, North Carolina. Sutton then confessed to killing a couple of other people.
It was kind of a wild goose chase. He led the police on for a while.
Sutton says there are 2 more bodies, but why can't he remember exactly where they're buried?
He was not in cuffs. He was liking the freedom of being outside, and that I think he loved the attention.
Sutton made up these other killings. There was still no body for Charles Almond until divers found him chained to a concrete block in a rock quarry just outside Newport. Charlie Almond had been dead several months before Dorothy Sutton. Further proof Nicky was lying about the death of his grandmother.
If there was anything that made me angry, it was that. The first thing was just overwhelming grief.
Sutton was serving 3 life sentences for 3 murders when he stabbed and killed a fellow inmate over drugs in 1985. That was the 4th strike that sent Sutton to death row. While Sutton's violent life behind bars continued, Amy Cook says her own parents continued to blame themselves for the death of Dorothy Sutton.
The guilt my dad felt, like if he hadn't called Miss Sutton and saying, will you check with Nicky again and see if he's heard from John? She kept asking him, where's John Large?
There's no way to know the real motive for killing her, or John Large, or Charles Almond. And Amy Cook is ready for the state to finally close the book and execute Nicky Sutton.
I feel like he's wasted enough of the taxpayers' money sitting there for 40 years.
But Charles Maynard's faith led him to ask the governor to spare Sutton's life.
To take a life anywhere cheapens life everywhere. And taking one more is not going to equal any balance for me.
The victims' relatives may disagree on the death penalty, But they are united in the desire for people to remember how their loved ones lived, not how their lives ended. Shattered on Nicky Sutton's violent path.
John Large, he was a fun, caring, loving, hardworking young man.
My uncle, he was a cool guy who really loved his family and loved this area.
In Knoxville, Jim Matheny, WBIR 10 News.